Everybody's afraid to be up here this morning if it's something I said. Well, we're continuing our series on the 12 powers of the Christ. Today you get 2 for the price of 1. Will and understanding, because will and understanding are always talked about together. Now let's look at it first. The ancient symbols for will and understanding are the sun and the moon. Aren't they beautiful symbols across all cultures? The sun and the moon are honored. The sun representing that great light of truth, that great light that we truly are in spirit. And the moon is that reflection, the reflected light of our human will that thinks it knows what's happening, but not quite as high as that beautiful sun and the reflection of the truth of our being. And every one of us in here has willpower. Some are more willful than others. My mother always tells the story, bless her heart. She had 5 daughters. I don't know how my dad lived through that, but she would talk about us and she would say, yeah, I was number 4. She would say, you know, I had 3 perfectly well-behaved daughters. And then she'd roll her eyes and say, and then I had Ann Marie. And it wasn't that I was bad. I just didn't color inside the lines, you know. I didn't follow the status quo. And I think I've shared with you before that every Sunday after church I got a spanking for misbehaving in church. Wouldn't they love to see me now? I think even then I was rebelling against mainstream religion. I don't know. But the 2 apostles, back on track, the 2 apostles that represent will and understanding are Matthew and Thomas. And the area of the body that we feel and express is the right front brain and the left front brain. The colors are silver and gold. Again, the sun and the moon, silver and gold. And those are alchemy metals too. You know, the ancient practice of alchemy, which is transforming power. The alchemists wanted to take base metal and turn it into gold. And of course, you know where that goes metaphysically. Transforming our human nature into the true divinity that we all are, the light that each of us is. So that's what will and understanding help us to do. Now Matthew, representing will, was a government tax collector. Bless his heart. How did he end up being an apostle? But when you look at it metaphysically, because we look at each person, place, or thing in Scripture as just another aspect of us. So what is that part of us? Well, the government tax collector would have been the executive power of the government. And so Matthew in us is the executive power of our mind. My will be done in my life. I'm the chariot driver in the Tarot. I will what I want to have happen in my life. And as I said, some of us are a little more willful than others. My will be done. But metaphysically, what happened to Matthew? Jesus came up to him, which would be the Christ or the divinity in us, and said, come follow me. Not your human will. Come follow my will. I'll take you to a higher place, a greater place. And Matthew didn't flinch. He said yes, and off he went. Now that can feel a little uncomfortable if people are afraid of God's will. I know I grew up thinking God's will would be making me do something I didn't want to do, which is probably why I resisted church when I was younger. But God's will and ours are one. There is no separate will. It's simply a higher will for our highest good. And the highest will that God has for each of us is to awaken to the truth of our being. Now, when will works alone without spiritual understanding, that's being humanly willful, it can be disaster. That's why I say be careful what you pray for. You just might get it. Watch out what you will to have happen in your life. Without spiritual understanding, it's going to happen. It's going to be your highest will. So when will and understanding work together, the outcome is much better. And I love the promise in Scripture that says, God has more for you than you could ask or even imagine. And if you're like Han Solo, you can imagine quite a lot, right? More than our meager human will can imagine. Now, so that's will and that's Matthew. And then you go over to understanding, represented by Thomas. How did he get picked for understanding? He was the doubting Thomas. But out of our doubts, out of our questioning, you've got a doubting Thomas here? Let's hear it for Tom. Out of the doubts, out of the questioning, comes that spiritual understanding. I know I was like you, Tom. When I was young, my questioning nature was just not appreciated by those nuns. They were very frustrated with my questioning nature. But that questioning nature led me to a freer spiritual practice, to unity, where we see each other as one, and where we come together for that transformational alchemy of the mind. You know, some people come here to unity churches because we're a feel-good church. We're positive and it feels good to be here. And that's fine. If that's the only reason you come, that's fine. But anybody that's worked with me know I will push your buttons to get you to transform. We're here to transform. Yes, it feels good to be here. Yes, it's wonderful. But we're here to have transformational alchemy. Now, there's an old argument that I love. Is it free will? Is it predestiny? Or is it fate? Where we're going, what we evolve to, how our future unfolds. And I always say, like Forrest Gump, I think it's a little bit of a combination of all. But just fate leaves too much to chance. And only predestiny relieves us of any responsibility. Can we really just sit back and do nothing? Although there is one predestined outcome, and that is our awakening. Now, the time it takes is up to us. But when we use free will with spiritual understanding, when they work together, the higher will comes forth. And our human will that goes around in circles, one crazy thing after another, suddenly comes in to a higher expression. That's why will and understanding have to work together. Because I don't know about you, but my human will has taken me to many interesting places with many interesting people. Now, back when I was younger, I can say that now at my age, you know, we all say that now. When my children were growing up, every year we went on an annual vacation. And one year, because my sister had moved so far away, I decided I wanted to visit my sister, and she lived close to Eureka Springs. Anybody been to Eureka Springs? It's a wonderful place to go. So we planned, yes, we do that. Well, just before we left, we had just gotten into Unity. Just found out about Unity Village. And here we find out that Unity Village was just a little bit out of the way. And my ex said to me, well, let's go see Unity Village. And there was a part of me that resisted. No, I want to go see my sister. I'm going to Eureka Springs, you know, don't interfere with that. But then I finally thought, well, it is just a little out of the way. So we did end up at Unity Village. And guess what I picked up? The ministerial school catalog. And that began my step into ministerial school. Now, Charles Fillmore describes what happened. He said, us humans may assume to have a mind of our own, but the origin and destiny are in God mind. You know, we open and receive those ideas from God mind, and then we think they're ours. Then he added, God does not dictate man's acts, although he may instruct and draw him through love away from error. And so through love, I was drawn to Unity Village. Yes, I still got to go to Eureka Springs. I still got to see my sister. But through love, I was drawn, a little bit of a side trip, to Unity Village. And my life has never been the same since. So do you see how God's will and ours are one? If we surrender and let go of our ego willfulness and allow that spiritual understanding to take us there. I think the best thing, though, that Charles Fillmore said about God's will, because God's will can strike terror into a lot of people. Charles Fillmore said God's will is the ceaseless longing of the Creator to fulfill itself in us. The ceaseless longing to fulfill it. Isn't that beautiful? I don't think I've ever heard anything more beautiful. And then he went on to say God's will for you is perfect life, perfect wisdom, perfect love, And you could go on, perfect health, perfect wholeness, perfect abundance. The ceaseless longing of the Creator to fulfill itself in us. Wow, I like that. There's an old story, some of you might have heard it before, about how God's will works and how if we just follow those promptings, even if we don't intellectually understand them, good things come about. And it's a story about a woman named Brenda, and she went mountain climbing, and it was her first time mountain climbing, and she's climbing up, and wouldn't you know it, her contact lens fell out. Not a good thing to do if you're mountain climbing, I would think. So anyway, she's looking around and can't find it, but all of a sudden she heard a voice from below, and the voice yelled up, "Hey, anybody who's a contact lens?" Here there was a little ant carrying that contact lens across the ground. And so she found her contact lens because of that little ant carrying that contact lens. Now, her father happened to be a cartoonist, so he drew a cartoon of this little ant carrying the contact lens, and he put a caption with it that I think is so funny. The caption was the ant speaking or thinking, and the ant was going on with this contact lens saying, "God, I don't know why you want me to carry this thing. I can't eat it. It's awfully heavy. But if this is what you want me to do, I'll carry it." And I thought, wow, that is so perfect. So often we get those inner promptings through our spiritual understanding of our heart. Oh, I think we should do this. I don't have a clue why I'm doing this. I don't have a clue what's happening, but I feel like it's the right thing to do. God's will for us is only good. Now let's compare, like we did last week with wisdom. Let's compare understanding with intellectual knowledge. As you remember from last week, intellectual knowledge is human reason through our five senses. This is what it looks like, so I'm reasoning that this is what it should be. And that's where we come up with my will is best, not thy will and my will be done. But then when we get spiritual understanding of the heart with that, there's that higher revelation of a better idea. And that's where the story of Jesus and John the Baptist come in. Metaphysically speaking, I talk about this all the time in class, and people think I'm just, into blood and gore or something. But, John the Baptist was beheaded. Because metaphysically speaking, what is that in us? All us intellectuals, all us people that like to live in our head. Yes, we have that illumined intellect, but at some point it has to go. So spiritual understanding, isn't that fun? I read far too many murder mysteries. That's why nobody's sitting up here this morning. But it has to happen so the spiritual understanding of the heart can come through and say, "Oh, I have a better way. I have a better way." In Matthew 11, Jesus ends up talking about John the Baptist and honoring him and honoring that illumined intellect. He said, "Among them that are born of women, there has not arisen a greater man than John the Baptist. But yet, that is but little in the kingdom of God is greater than he." In other words, no matter how smart you are, no matter how intellectually superior you are, that is the least when it's compared to spiritual understanding of the heart. So we have to put away the intellect so spiritual understanding can come through. Now, one of the ways that John was put away before that was he was put into prison. And he began to lose his faith and have his doubts. And he said to the disciples, he said, "Hey, will you ask Jesus, are you really the one that comes, or is there somebody else to look for? In other words, are you really the Messiah? Because I'm stuck here in prison, and I'm not so sure that I'm back on the right horse right now." And Jesus sends him a message. Here's that illumined intellect who thinks he knows more. He said, "You go tell John that the things which you hear and see happening, the blind receive their sight, the lame are walking, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up, and the poor have good tidings preached to them." In other words, with the spiritual understanding which Jesus represents, with spiritual understanding, divine will can suddenly not only do anything, but do miraculous things. When the intellect is set aside and the spiritual understanding comes through. And how we can make that practical in our lives, especially here in Green Valley. Charles Fillmore said the simple statement, I will to be healthy, I will to be well, that simple statement gathers the forces of the mind and body about the central idea of wholeness. I will to get well. How many of you have done that here, Bonnie? I know you have. I will to get better. It gathers all the forces of the universe. That's how strong and powerful our will is. And when we do it in harmony with God's will. And a simple statement, I am in harmony with God's will for me, can lift us to a higher state. Well, our will is the executive power of all the other powers. In other words, our will determines which of the 12 powers we call forth, how we use them. But when willfulness happens before that spiritual understanding, it can be disaster. When the selfish will of the ego, and I want this, and I want that. And then we make a mistake or it all falls apart, and then we go, oh, now I get it, now I get it. My dad would say that's like shutting the barn door after the cows are out. A little late then, isn't it? When you're stubborn, willful, and resistant, those states of mind congest the flow of life. The flow of life just can't flow. But when understanding comes with our will or before the will, wow, all those great miraculous things come forth. Now at the same time, Jesus did not teach the doctrine of submission. He never saw that. Any system that suppresses the will is radically wrong. Jesus taught the law of cause and effect, the law of responsibility. If I do this, this is going to be the effect of the cause. If I do this, this is what happens. There was no judgment there. Just, oh, this is the effect of that cause, and this is the effect of that cause. And we're the chariot driver. It's our choice what we do, and then we accept the responsibility for what happens, especially if we do it without spiritual understanding. Now let's go to a Zen moment. Life and death are in your hands. Once upon a time, in a galaxy far, far away, there was a wise old teacher and a young man. And the young man didn't want to listen to the old teacher. He tried to discredit the wisdom of the old man. And he came to the older man with a bird in his hands. And he said to him, he was trying to trick him, he said, is the bird in my hand alive or dead? Yes. Well, the wise old man knew that if he said it was dead, the boy would crush the bird and it would be dead. And if he said it was alive, the boy wouldn't and it would be alive. So he replied, it is as you will it, my son. It is as you will it. Our destiny is in our hands. Whatever we will to happen, with spiritual understanding or without it, is ours. We have that much power through the executive power of the mind to shape our reality. So let's recap. We've got will and understanding, the left and right frontal brain, the sun and the moon, the gold and silver, the masculine, the feminine, our spirit and our soul, our humanness and our divinity. And when we work together, will and understanding, the opposites become one. The opposites become one, and that alchemy of transformation, I see that going all through the country right now. The energy of opposites become one. When our 12 powers work together with the executive power of will and the heart of understanding, we awaken to the truth of our being. Let us take that into prayer. Oh, we honor these 12 powers that are here to assist us, empower us, and guide us. And we call forth those qualities for good, for harmony, for peace, for love, for that awakening presence to flow across the land, once again touching every heart and every mind. We will it to happen. We will love to happen. For with spiritual understanding, there is only love, only oneness, only peace, and only harmony. And then we rejoice. Thank you, Father, Mother God, in the nature of the Christ, and so it is. Amen.
Please join us in singing Love Is My Decision and your bulletin.